say my all-time favorite horror movie is bigger and better than the average horror film. So, or at least bring their own friends over, they can be the star of their own show. People don't give horror the credit that it deserves. Even people that don't love horror, that gets people up and mingling and having a good time. Definitely play the drinking games. But these aren't decorations. This is real food, thoughtful recipes.
The book is called The Horror Movie Night Cookbook: 60 Deliciously Deadly Recipes Inspired by Iconic Slashers, Zombie Films, Psychological Thrillers, Sci-Fi Spooks, and more. What inspired you as far as horror movies go? Can you tell us a little bit about, maybe as I get to know you, what's your all-time favorite horror movie?
Wow, that's a tough one. So, so I would say my all-time favorite horror movie is Scream. It's what got me into diving deeper into horror. My mother actually got me into horror when I was a kid. We would watch a bunch of the old ones after school and that sort of thing. But as I started to discover the newer ones on my own, Scream was the first one that really showed me that there's more to horror than just, you know, blood and boobs.
Very well said. So we see before us a filmmaker, an artist, an author, many things. Tell us a little bit about you as a person, where you came from, and how you got from where you were to the author of this really fun book.
Sure. That was a process. I went to school for theater and film and acting, and took that and moved to New York, as most people do, New York or LA. I chose New York. I did that for a while. I did a couple of my own indie horror films as well. And then as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do as a side project, because you have to have a side project when you're trying to break into that field. I thought, I love cooking, I love experimenting, I love being creative. Let's take some culinary classes. So I was gifted some culinary classes, and it was really great. And I thought, okay, great. Now I'm going to go work in a kitchen. But the more I thought about that, I realized that I would hate it. If I had to do it as a day job, I would hate cooking. So I sort of put that on the back burner and focused more on the theater and film and all that, and just kept plugging away at that. When I moved to the West Coast, I became artistic director of a couple theater companies, and had some plays published, that sort of thing. So my writing and my directing was starting to take off a little bit. So I had a little more free time to go back to the cooking thing that I was looking forward to doing. And so the way this came together is that I was doing a play with some friends, and we were chatting. We actually were doing the play The Woman in Black, and we were chatting about horror and horror films. And they felt the way I felt about them initially, that they're all just blood and boobs, and I just couldn't have that. I'd seen so many great ones that have changed my life and had so many positive messages. Because horror movies are basically about the outcasts winning, and I felt like I've been an outcast my whole life, so I could really connect to them. So I started showing them the ones that I thought were important. I started with my favorites and then kind of dug deeper into the ones that I felt told really great stories and had really great messages, through these horror movie nights where I would pair an appetizer, a dinner, and a dessert, each with its own movie. And we would do 3 movies a night, and we would do this every couple weeks.
Actually, the hands-on of going from zero to finished book. Can you talk a little bit about the mammoth undertaking that was, and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 lessons that you learned from that process?
Absolutely. Yeah, it really was an undertaking. When I started these nights, these horror movie nights myself, I just thought they were going to be fun. I just thought we were all going to have a good time. And then about halfway through, maybe about 5 or 6 nights in, my friends were all like, "What are you going to do with this?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? We're just having a good time." And they're like, "No, other people are going to want to do this." And I'm like, thinking about what can I do with this? Okay, maybe I can start an event service and cater these nights myself and or whatever. But ultimately I chose to do a book because it's more accessible and it's more fun. You get to do it in your own home and invite your friends over, and it makes for a much more fun evening. I Once I decided that it was going to be a book, it took about 2 years to compile it all into book format, um, retake some pictures, uh, that sort of thing, get it all ready for my copy. So I self-published it, I think 2 years ago, and then it got picked up. And so the version that you have and that we're talking about today is the version that Ulysses Press put out. And so after I put mine out, it was about another year or so until their copy went out. So it was about overall 5 year process, I think, from the first horror movie night all the way to the book that we're talking about today. And if I have any tips for people, I would just say find what makes your idea stick out. There's a lot out there. So, what about your idea do people want to know? Be authentic about it and just keep plugging away at it. It's going to take a while. You're going to get frustrated. Move on to another project. Take a walk. Do something else. And come back when the inspiration strikes, but never force anything. That's my big thing. You can't force inspiration, or you're not going to end up with the best product that you could possibly have.
First draft to Ulysses Press to now, how close is the finished product compared to your original vision?
It's very close, actually. So a lot of things that were changed were just like improvements on the pictures. Um, Things are worded differently, more clear, more consistency throughout the book. So Ulysses was really great with the editing process. They kept a lot of what I wanted to do with the book and the whole spirit of the book. Um, they kept that intact and really just took it to the next level.
That's awesome. Was there any big surprises in this process for you as far as, like, there's 60 recipes, there's millions of horror movies out there. How on earth did you go from a million down to 60? What was your process like deciding which which horror movies to include and which ones not to?
It really had to just speak to me. It had to be bigger and better than the average horror film. So, or at least I had to view it that way. I studied horror and I studied film throughout my life, and I can grasp the difference between your average horror film and something that's trying to tell the viewer, to influence the viewer in some way. And those are the ones that I tried to put into the book. I know that 60 is not a lot, and that's why there will be more books, hopefully. But it's just where I thought it would be a fun start to break newbies in. So rather than just hitting every classic that you can think of, Exorcist, Jaws, I picked a lot of classics and mixed them in with some newer things that had more up-to-date themes and up-to-date comments on society.
I was looking through it, and in the time I was sitting and there were as young as teenagers in the room and as old as people in their 70s. So it's quite a range. And what was fun about it was I didn't notice at first, but literally people were stealing it out of each other's hands because it became this communal effort where people were shouting out drinking games, or they were shouting out, remember that movie, remember this movie, oh my gosh, I love, and they'd name a drink or they'd name a food. As an author, as a creator, how does that make you feel? Was it designed to be a communal experience? And I'm assuming you've seen this in real life where you're someone's enjoying what you've created and they're just passing it on and passing it on and stealing it. How does that make you feel?
Putting it out there, putting anything out there always makes me incredibly nervous. But the feedback that I've been getting, hearing people, seeing pictures from people doing their own horror movie nights, or just recreating the recipes, or just on podcasts and things talking about the clever titles and all that kind of stuff. It just makes me feel so good, because I was worried that maybe this is just a me thing. Like maybe I'm just this weirdo that's super into horror and food, and it's good to know that I'm not. The whole horror community, the whole community is into something like this, that they can entertain, they can bring their own friends over, they can be the star of their own show. It kind of speaks to everybody, I think, and it's good to know that I wasn't wrong.
When I saw the book Horror Movie Night, I immediately thought, oh, what a fun Halloween gift. This is great. And then I realized, and you encouraged and said, no, 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 no. This isn't. So just why don't you tell everybody again what you told me the first time? Because I want everyone to hear this, because movie lovers are going to agree. Foodies are going to agree. Horror lovers are definitely going to agree. So when is the best time of year for the Horror Movie Night Cookbook?
All year. There's
Why,
no set time.
Rich?
What's that?
Why not just Halloween, Rich?
Oh no. I mean, horror has so many stories to tell that, it's there, and there a lot of them are very important, that you can watch them all year round. Um, get in that spirit all year round. I think that people don't give horror the credit that it deserves. Um, there are a lot of great films out there that even people that don't love horror will like, and those are the ones I think we should be talking about. Horror should always be part of the conversation. Um, so hopefully somebody from the Oscars is listening. The most overlooked genre, but no, I think horror. There's always a good time for horror, and if for no other reason, but because a lot of horror films are set throughout the year. So if you wanted to do a horror movie night for Valentine's Day, you've got plenty to choose from. There are plenty of Valentine's Day horror movies out there. It's not just for those of us that like to get dressed up one day a year. It's all year round. It's appropriate.
To talk to our audience, I would say half are entertainment lovers, half are foodies. Obviously, there's tremendous crossover because we have a very dinner party kind of an audience. You had to cook all of these meals and more.
Several
Tell us,
times, yes.
and do you have a favorite kitchen gadget?
Oh. Um, Yeah, so I had to cook these meals. There were actually some other recipes that I worked on too for these films that I didn't put in the book. Everything is trial and error in the kitchen. So I cooked several of these many, many times until I found the right measurements of everything, and it was a long process in the kitchen, but a fun one, of course. Um, God, I maybe it makes me basic, but my favorite kitchen gadget is the slow cooker, because you can do so much with it, and you can step away from it and work on other things while your main meal is is setting in there for hours. And I just I just think it's so brilliant. It saves so much time. And maybe that makes me basic.
Other dinner parties and friends getting together. Since you are the horror movie night cookbook expert, walk us through. Give us some tips and advice. If I was going to throw a horror movie night tonight, this week, next week, this weekend, what should it have? How should I prepare? What kind of a night? Tell me expert tips.
It's really how far you want to dive into it. I've done horror film nights where we just all get together and we eat the food and we watch the movies. I've done ones where we play extra games other than the drinking games. We have costume contests, that sort of thing. It's really how far you want to go into it. But I would say start early. If you're going to use some of the recipes in this book, start early, because there are many things that could go wrong, especially if you're not used to cooking. And there are things that could go wrong, things that could burn, things that might not set the way you want them to. So have extra ingredients on hand and try again. And I'm sure it's going to come out perfect. But I would just say have fun with it. Try it all, have fun with it. If you don't like a movie that the recipe is paired with, think about that recipe, and maybe it could go to a different movie too. And then you can, customize your own horror movie nights with it. So I think there are many ways to approach it. Just have fun with it is my main advice.
I love that. You mentioned costumes. If we do want to go to the extreme, do you have any extreme suggestions for my friends and your friends out there who love movies, they love horror, they really, really want to get into it? Do you have 2 or 3 or 4 just Super Bowl Sunday level ideas? Have to.
um, yeah, definitely add costumes, decorate. A fog machine is always fun. Um, pick the recipes that can make it a more social evening, maybe ones where you add your own stuff to them. Like the one for Cujo is a it's like a burrito bowl essentially, so that people can add their own ingredients to it. That gets people up and mingling and having a good time. Definitely play the drinking games, but be careful because the drinks are strong. Yeah, I would say just make a day of it. Make a full day of it like you would if you were watching a day of playoff games for football. Yeah.
You've done it incredibly well. Clearly, you've done it well enough. Self-published to Ulysses. People are loving it. I'd love to bring up that you'd love foodies or movie lovers to be thinking about and knowing about you or this book.
Um, I would just want them to know that I really did put a lot of thought and heart into everything that they see in this book. I really didn't just say, oh, wow, let's come up with some gimmicky looking cookie or something. These aren't decorations. This is real food and real thoughtful recipes that are inspired by things that happen in the film, things that they eat, things that they do, places they go. For example, in The Descent, they are supposed to be, spelunking in the Appalachian Mountains. So I used a local dish from the Appalachians as that recipe. These are not just Halloween decorations. These are actual recipes that you can enjoy any time of year. But watch the movie too. So yeah, I would just want people to know that don't expect, cutesy little Pinterest ghost cookies. That's not what you're going to get. You're going to get real recipes like you would in any cookbook. This just has the the horror edge to it as well.
Richard, thank you. The book is called The Horror Movie Night Cookbook, Richard S. Sargent. As we wrap up, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your intelligence and your passion for movies and art and cooking and horror movies. For those of us who want to follow you, who want to browse the book, where can we find the book? Where can we learn more about you? Tell us the website, the social media, anything you'd like.
Sure. Yeah. The book can be found, I believe, at any local bookstore or online, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, that sort of thing. Um, if you want to learn more about me or just maybe get bonus recipes every now and then on my Instagram, you can follow the Horror Movie Night Cookbook Instagram or my own personal one, our Sargent83. So I'm on Facebook as well. You can find me on there. Um, yeah, stay in touch. Tell me what you like, and if you host your own, tag me in that sort of stuff. I'd love to see how your recipes come out, what you would change. I'd love feedback. So if you do try any of this, please contact me online and let me know what you liked and what you didn't.